Now moving on to Lebanon, where the presidential vacuum has persisted for more than a year now, despite serious calls from the House Speaker Nabih Berri and the Maronite Patriarch Bashar al-Rai. Meanwhile, the Kataeb party had its elections. Let's have a look at a brief report on that before we get to talk to the deputy leader of the Kataeb, or the Lebanese Phalange party. Samy Gemayel, one of the youngest MPs in the Lebanese parliament, has now become the leader of one of the oldest political parties in the country, the Lebanese Phalange or Kataeb party. Young Samy demonstrated early interest in Lebanese politics. He was the head of the student movement of the Kataeb as a law student at the St. Joseph University in Beirut. Son of former President Amin Gemayel and nephew of slain President-elect Bashir Gemayel, also brother of MP Pierre Gemayel, who was also assassinated following the Cedar Revolution. Perhaps it's an understatement to dub them the Kennedys of Lebanon. Gemayel has strong views for independence ever since his upbringing. He participated in various pro-independence marches.
الهدف هو القضية تبعنا لبناننا، لبنان يلي نحن بدنا اياه حر سيد مستقل، لبنان يلي كل لبناني عايش فيه بكرامته، لبنان يلي كل لبناني عايش فيه بحريته، لبنان يلي لبناني ما بيتنازل فيه عن أي حق مكتسب له كمواطن وكإنسان من هالمجتمع العالمي يلي نحن بننتمي له.
Samy Gemayel aimed at reuniting the politically divided Lebanese Christians. In 2009's parliamentary elections, he won a seat in the Metin district in the governorate of Mount Lebanon. He's an outspoken critic of both Hezbollah's military wing and the Michel Aoun-led Free Patriotic Movement, the main Christian party opposing the March 14 movement. Earlier this year, Gemayel had a special address from the Lebanese parliament commemorating the Armenian genocide. In their own language, he addressed Lebanese Armenians who form about 4% of the country's population.
Hayot Tsegasbanutian, Meguges, Million Nahadagner.
Perhaps viewed as an exemplary elections in its timeliness and conformity to procedures, the Kataeb party held its elections mid-June this year, something the Lebanese people wish applied to the presidential election, which, despite it being about the head of state and the image of Lebanon, it remains a Maronite issue par excellence. On the 14th of June, and after winning 339 votes, Samy Gemayel became the 7th head of the Kataeb party, in a move that transfers the leadership of the 80-year-old party to the third generation of a family that has already produced 2 men voted to be Lebanese presidents. Joseph Abu Khalil was elected as the party's deputy leader, with former Social Affairs Minister and academic Dr Selim El-Sayegh elected as second deputy leader. And now we are joined from Beirut by former Lebanese Minister of Foreign Affairs and academic Dr Selim El-Sayegh, deputy leader of the Kataeb party. Welcome to Straightforward Levant TV.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me.
Dr. Sayegh, before we get to our discussion with you, let me congratulate you on your seat as deputy leader of the party and to MP Samy Gemayel, the Kataeb's party's new president. And
thank you.
Dr. Sayegh, what will MP Gemayel bring to the Kataeb party in terms of its image and rhetoric? What will evolve, what will not?
Actually, MP Samy Gemayel is 34 years old. He's young, but he's not too young. When we see the British politics and we see the age group of some ministers and prime ministers throughout British history, we know that in Lebanon we could be in line with this modern evolution of democracy when we have a party leader who's 34 years old. Now, of course, the election of MP Gemayel is by itself an event, since in Lebanon there is no presidential election, no legislative election. The whole system is blocked because of the situation that is prevailing in the Middle East and in Syria. When a party that is so entrenched in the Lebanese politics and social fabric is capable to organize such an election, it is by itself an event. With MP Gemayel, it will be more dynamism, more focused on the future generations. We will be more clean, quote unquote, when it comes to approaching issues, because he will be the only party leader who did not know the war in Lebanon, and therefore this is the generation of the post-war elite who has the memory, of course. He's part of the collective memory of what Lebanon has been through, but he wants to make politics and to practice politics in a completely modern and new way. And this is appealing to the youth, this is appealing to women, this is appealing to all age groups, actually, who would like to see a regeneration of the Lebanese democracy and political participation. What it will remain is that the Kataeb party has been the main pillar in fighting for the independence in Lebanon. It has done it during the French mandate, and its leader, Pierre Gemayel, was wounded in confrontation with the French mandatory forces in Lebanon. Throughout the history, modern history of Lebanon, the Kataeb party has been at the forefront to really fulfill its role as a very of being very keen to preserve the sovereignty of Lebanon, to preserve the institutions. And in this way, I think the Kataeb party will continue to play this role in the future.
And Dr. Sayegh, what would you say about the previous impression of the Kataeb, especially that of being a right-wing Christian party par excellence, which has sometimes been closely associated with federalizing Lebanon? Has this changed today?
Listen, the doctrine of the party, regardless of the labeling, right-wing, left-wing, the doctrine of the party is social democrat. And I can tell you that socially, this party is very progressive. It has been the only, or the first party in Lebanon who has put the labor law since the 40s, who has fought for women's rights since the 50s, the rights of women to vote. And therefore, it has been always pro-middle class and marginalized class in Lebanon. Now, when it comes to the political positioning of the party, this party has been very much nationalistic, because the very state of Lebanon, the very existence of Lebanon has been threatened since the emergence of the modern Lebanese state in 1920. And therefore, the party was considered as right-wing because it was always pro-Lebanon. It always wanted to have Lebanon first. It always wanted to be privileging the interests of Lebanon over the interests of neighboring countries, most notably Syria or other Arab states, or interests of Lebanon over Palestinian interests, and the interests, of course, of Lebanon against now the coalitions that are being built in this area, Iran on the one hand and Saudi Arabia on the other. In this way, yes, the Kataeb party is a very Lebanese party, which means for some literature is a right-wing party. Now, the MP Gemayel has advocated throughout his political career, and though he's 34, he has started actively the organized militancy since 19 years. And regardless of the fact that he was born in a political family in Lebanon that has given 2 presidents of the republic, and his grandfather was the founder of the party. He, throughout his political career, he has been questioning the stability of the Lebanese system. And he has asked for a revision of the Lebanese system so it would become more immune from interference from the foreign powers, most notably the regional powers. This is why he took on his account to put as a priority the neutrality of Lebanon. Preserving the neutrality of Lebanon would dissociate the domestic politics from the regional politics and from the game of power between the different players in the Middle East. Yes. He has took on his account as well the issue of having a better equilibrium of power sharing between the central state in Beirut and a decentralized state in the regions. Yes. And therefore has called for the regionalization of the Lebanese politics, of the Lebanese system. It is a kind of a Lebanese federalism that has no other model in the world. Already Lebanon is a personal federal system, since there are 18 communities with 18 different laws related to the communities, whereby you can marry and divorce and inherit according to 18 different laws. So he's asking to take that a step further in order to better preserve the unity of Lebanon.
So obviously yes. Here we're talking about federalizing the bureaucracy in the Lebanese system, decentralizing the authorities where everyone can have easier access rather than going to Beirut or other places. Now, also what was remarkable in Sheikh Samy's when he declared his candidacy for the presidency of the Kataeb, he mentioned he invited largely the Muslim community to join the party because this is a party for everyone. What do you have to say about this remarkable event there?
Actually, because this party is not is not a Muslim party, is not a Christian party. Well, in Lebanon during the war, since the institutions were attacked by a coalition of some Muslim forces and some Palestinians, therefore the war in Lebanon took the image of a fight between Christians and Muslims. And the Kataeb party, within its ranks, it always had militants from both Christians and Muslims. Now, largely, after the evolution of the war and the post-war of Lebanon, we have like 95 or more persons that are from the Christian community. This is why it's called a Christian party. Now, there is nothing in the Kataeb party doctrine that is of a religious dimension. It is a secular doctrine, and it's a civil doctrine. And therefore, we want to include in the party again different communities, because we are already existing in all geographical areas in Lebanon. And therefore, many people actually from different communities are contacting us to adhere to the party, because this will be the real guarantee that if we ask for a revision of the system, we cannot ask for a segregation in the country or a division of the country. On the contrary, we want to build the common space between Christians and the Muslims, and it has to be started within the parties themselves. It's a challenge for us, but it is a challenge as well to all other parties. We have who have tough times to include people within their ranks from different communities.
Dr. Sayegh, tell us about the presidential vacuum in Babda. How does the Kataeb party approach this issue now that the presidential impasse has persisted for longer than a year?
I would ask this question, but if I may, please, you relate the issue of federalism, because you said about administration or administrative decentralization.
Yes.
This is true, but it is not enough. We are asking actually the regions to have kind of local governance. Local governance were elected by the regions with the limited powers, of course, because the problem of development in Lebanon, like in different countries in Europe, in the world, is that the central is really becoming so much imposing on the regions. Therefore, we are asking not just for deconcentration of powers or just administrative decentralization. We would like to have some kind of local governance, elected local governance, so people would be able and have the incentives to take initiatives in order to develop themselves the best way they can see that. This is just to differentiate ourselves from the calls for administrative decentralization, which is associated actually with just deconcentration, with no delegations of powers. We are asking now really for a genuine delegation of powers to the regions, because otherwise we would be not doing the the spirit actually of the Taif agreement in Lebanon, which has called for enlarged administrative decentralization, but they didn't define what is meant by enlarged decentralization.
Yes, stay with us, Dr. Sayegh, if you don't mind. Stay with us. Before we get back to my question about the presidential vacuum,
yes.
Our guest here at the studio, Mr. Jonathan Fryer, how important is decentralizing powers in a small country? The country is already small, but would it help a lot, in your opinion, to decentralize?
I think it does, basically, because people these days, particularly now they're connected through social media more directly with politicians and with decision makers, want to have a closer link to power. And it's rather interesting what your guest was saying was basically a call for subsidiarity, as we call it in Europe. In other words, that you take decisions at the lowest appropriate level rather than at the top. And that is relevant whether you talk about a relatively small country like Lebanon or a much bigger organism such as the European Union.
It promotes equality, I guess, also in access to public welfare and services and you know, generally the well-being, education
and it reduces the sense of marginalization, which is a problem in many communities in the Middle East, including in Lebanon.
Especially rural areas, I would say.
Exactly.
Back to you, Dr. Sayegh. Tell us more about the presidential vacuum and how is Kataeb approaching this? Dr. Sayegh?
Yes. The presidential election in Lebanon is, you know, an issue that has started to be felt or to be an issue really since the May 25, 2014. Lebanon, there is no president of the republic. And for the people who do not know enough about Lebanon, it is not just any president of the republic. The power sharing in Lebanon has divided the legislative, and executive, and the president among the three largest communities. The Shia for the Speaker of the House, the Sunni is the Prime Minister, and for the Christian Maronite is the President of the Republic. And therefore, when we speak in Lebanon about the pact, the National Pact, which is the founding political act that has brought the three communities together, actually we need to fill those three positions so the pact will hold. Our fight today is not just for a share in power for the Christians. It is not to fight for privileges. It's to fight for the pact. If there is no president of the republic, it means nothing in this country could be done according to the spirit of the Constitution itself. You can imagine how this country is being ruled. Since then, while you have a government with different actors, different ministers representing different parties, different communities, and who have inherited, according to the Constitution, but for an exceptional period, the powers of the president, but then who cannot really drive the country because this will be normalizing, actually, the vacuum at the presidential election. This is why our stand is clear. According to the Constitution, there should be no opening of the parliament for any legislation. The parliament has, and it is said as such in the Constitution, has to meet as an electoral body. And it has no right to meet other than for that. And then MPs have to go to the parliament to elect a president of the republic. Otherwise, all their laws that could be enacted, therefore, are illegal. This is for one. As when it comes to the government itself, the government has to function a minima. It means with minimum input, so it could just manage the necessities for the normal life of people, but the government without a president of the republic who presides over the meetings of the Council of Ministers cannot be done according to the spirit of the Constitution. Therefore, our stand is that we should urge the Lebanese MPs who are really, completely blocking the parliament by not responding to the call to go and vote.
Are you talking here about the MPs of Hezbollah and the Free Patriotic Movement?
I'm speaking about the coalition of Hezbollah, the coalition of Hezbollah and the Free Patriotic Movement, most notably, who are saying that either the leader of the Free Patriotic Movement is elected,
Michel Aoun,
or there will be General Michel Aoun, or there will be no elections. Okay, it has been said bluntly, and therefore, and you have all arguments that go in favor of this stand. One of them is that the Christians need a powerful president, and therefore Michel Aoun is considered as a powerful candidate. And therefore we go into all this rhetoric related to that, as if having no president is better just to have a president who is decent. And our terminology for a powerful president is a president who is not capable only to get the votes, but a president who is going to rule and capable to shape a national consensus around his vision and around his policies. And we have serious doubts now that General Aoun is the person who can do it. Anyhow, we cannot craft a president outside the parliament. We have to free the MPs from the pressure that is exerted on them, and tell them go and elect, and let the political game takes its turn, and it takes its own momentum. So we will see then between the different rounds what will happen and what kind of a president we will have in Lebanon.
Dr. Sayegh, my last question. Now, being a very quite young MP and one of the few young MPs at the parliament, it obviously gives Samy Gemayel more affinity to the youth, particularly the new generation Lebanese in the diaspora. Now, obviously, someone like yourself who's lived in France, you know exactly what the diaspora feels when it comes to Lebanon, sometimes alienated. Now, how high on the Kataeb's agenda is reaching out to those people outside Lebanon, and why?
Actually, as your guest has said, nowadays we are living in a digital era and everybody's connecting with everybody. And actually, the diaspora is in Lebanon.
Yes. So.
And therefore, it doesn't mean that the diaspora doesn't have its own specificity. And we are really now putting a plan to talk to the diaspora as part of the Lebanese population and to address the other dimension of the diaspora as well, which is a diaspora very active in as citizens in the different countries, host countries, if I can say so. We want really to do our homework in Lebanon first. This is what we are doing for the coming months, because we need not only to speak the right rhetoric to the diaspora, we need to the diaspora to show them and to tell them that Lebanon is capable with us to create the space, the fertile land where they can invest, when they can come and visit, when they can, towards which their dreams as well could be oriented. You know, if Lebanon, if we are not giving the good example and the good practice, so we can then attract the diaspora with achievements, not only with deeds, then we would be just duplicating the past. We are positioning ourselves as a force of change, of real change. And real change is not only in the look, but the change is really in putting forward the need to achieve. Then we can ask precisely the diaspora what we would like from them, and then we will be ready to tell them how we can serve them wherever they are. This pact of trust with the diaspora is going to be launched in the autumn 2015.
Well, it has just started, or pre-launched today, with your very remarkable interview with us, being based here in London, with us at Levant TV here. Thank you very much, former Lebanese Minister of Foreign Affairs and academic Dr Selim El-Sayegh, Deputy Leader of the Kataeb Party. Thank you very much indeed for your remarkable participation today.
Thank you.
Mr. Fryer, what do you think of this? If we compare now what's happening in the Prime Minister's speech here in London, our guest before, he said that the Muslims are marginalized, they're alienated, yet in Lebanon, a supposedly right-wing Christian party, or predominantly Christian party, is inviting Muslims to join its ranks and all that. Could we see Lebanon on this occasion as an example when it comes, or as a role model when it comes to religious pluralism?
Well, I think this is a very interesting development indeed for Lebanese politics. It's something, I think, which is going to take years, not months, to actually come to fruition, if it does come to fruition, to see whether, you know, Muslims will flock to that party and whether other parties will open themselves up with success to different confessional groups. But I do believe quite sincerely that many of the answers to the questions being asked here in Britain and in other European countries have got answers that will come from the Middle East. Britain cannot solve the problem of Islamist extremism on its own, and certainly cannot defeat, as the Prime Minister calls it, Islamic State on its own or with Western allies. It's the Middle East that has to sort out these issues, and I think we're entering a really interesting period in the history of Lebanon where it is charting its new role for the future, and thank goodness there are some young politicians who will be able to see this through.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fryer. As this episode comes to an end, we've just learned from one of the oldest political parties in the Middle East, known to be right-wing Christian, is inviting Muslims to become members. Now, here in the UK, things seem to be going in a different direction, where some factions claim they do not feel at home within the current government policies. And while some argue multiculturalism did not fail in Britain, it's extremist Islam that failed it. Only time will tell if the final attempts to save multiculturalism and maintain Britain's security will succeed. I'd like to thank our guests who joined us today. Mr. Raza Nadeem of the UK Muslim Public Affairs Committee spoke to us from northwest of England in Manchester. Dr. Selim El-Sayegh, Deputy Leader of the Kataeb Party, joined us from Beirut. And of course, our studio guest here, politician and journalist, writer, Mr. Jonathan Fryer. Many thanks for being with us again. Stay tuned to Levant TV, straightforward, and I'll be with you again soon. Thanks for watching.